My guest today is Brad Zerivitz, who, as Senior Director of Visual Communications for the American Red Cross, has traveled around your own country, Brad, the United States, and the world, covering humanitarian crisis as a photographer and videographer. Brad, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Today, I'd like to talk about your experience in humanitarian storytelling. But something else you did recently caught my eye. This year, you traveled solo by bicycle across a very large stretch of Africa, from Addis Ababa in Ethiopia to Cape Town, South Africa. That's a journey of almost 7,000 kilometers. And that's if you take the most direct route. What on earth inspired you to do that?
Yeah, I mean, there's honestly not a really good direct reason. I just wanted to do it. I had heard about this route, Cairo to Cape Town, a while ago, and I had read some books about people doing it and seen some videos, and it just seemed like a lot of fun, and I really wanted to do it. So I made it happen for myself.
But why by bicycle?
Bicycle is a really unique way to travel, and it's a really special way to travel. You're not enclosed in a car, you're open to the elements, and you're open to all the people, and you're traveling at a human speed. While you're riding your bike, you can have conversations with people alongside the road. People can ride up alongside next to you on their bicycles. And so you have like all of this exposure to the elements, and you can feel the environment that you're in. You can feel every hill, the sun and the wind. And you can also have all of these connections with people along the road. So I just think it's a really special way to travel.
I imagine this was not your first time doing such a trip on your bicycle.
That's
Can you
right.
talk about your previous journeys?
Yeah, I started bike touring in, I think, 2016. And I did some smaller trips, like week-long trips in the United States. And then 2 years ago, I decided to ride my bike across the United States. So I started from home in Washington, D.C., and I went to Washington State. It was like Washington to Washington. And that was a really amazing trip, and it gave me the confidence to do something like this trip in Africa.
How long did that trip take, and how long did the trip from Addis to Cape Town take?
Yeah, so I'm not a fast cyclist, but I can ride all day, and I can ride a lot of miles or a lot of kilometers in a day. So I did the United States in only 50 days with 2 days off. I didn't take a single day off between Washington, D.C. and Colorado. I just rode straight through for 28 days and then finished in Washington, D.C. after 50 days. Um, the trip in Africa took a little bit longer because the distance was almost twice as far. And so that trip took a little bit under 100 days. So yeah, I started in Ethiopia and made my way south and ended in Cape Town about 100 days after I started. I didn't take that many days off on this trip either. Took a few days off to do some safaris and a couple of rest days, but pretty much I just rode straight through, averaging about 100 kilometers a day.
That's twice as long as the one from Washington to Washington, though.
Yeah,
Quite a trip.
yeah. And there was a lot more challenges. Of course, I didn't have to deal with border crossings when I was doing the trip in the United States. I didn't have to worry about changing currency, or it was a lot easier to find food. It was just, yeah, the
Mhm.
US trip was easier in pretty much every way.
When humanitarians or tourists travel, they're often in a very privileged position compared to those that they're visiting or passing by. Did you feel that way as a Westerner with the leisure of time and resources to take such a journey? Because you're also a humanitarian in your day job, you probably think about these things.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Obviously, I'm traveling because I want to and because I find enjoyment in doing so. But along the road, you're riding with people who are traveling because by bicycle because they need to for their livelihood. For example, in Rwanda, there were people loaded down. Their whole bike was loaded with bananas because that was their job, was transporting the bananas via bike. In Tanzania, you would see people with these bars built out on the side of their bicycle, carrying water jugs because that's what they needed to bring water to their family. And so, for sure, you think about this stuff, and it's just amazing to be able to be riding along, and then you have all of these other people from different walks of life riding right next to you, and you're all traveling in the same way. Hills are just as hard for you as they are for them, and so it's just a really nice way to experience the world and to experience the people in these places.
What was, I'm sure there were many, but can you think of one day that was what you could call the best day that you had out there on the road?
Yeah, so I really enjoyed traveling in Uganda. That was the people were so friendly and welcoming, and the roads were good, and it just made for a really nice riding experience, especially in the western part of the country. And I remember in the beginning of the day stopping for lunch, and they have this food called Rolex, like the watch, and it's chapati bread rolled up with eggs. So I got myself a Rolex sandwich, and I'm riding down the road, and I get a little bit tired, and so I stop to eat my Rolex under a tree, and I'm waiting there, and a couple of guys pull up on a motorcycle with a bunch of water jugs. And they're kind of looking at me, and I'm standing under the tree just eating my sandwich. And they're talking amongst themselves. And then eventually, one of the guys gets off the motorcycle and he starts unloading the jugs of water. And I realize I'm standing in front of his house under his tree. And so I see him unload 4 jugs of water, and he takes 2 of the jugs and he carries them down to his house. And so, being that I'm using his tree for shade, I go and grab the other 2 jugs and I walk them down to his house as well. And we didn't speak the same language, but we had just an amazing connection and just ability to share just the importance of shade and water and
Hmm.
these kind of really basic things.
Going to look at the other side, what was the hardest day, you would say, of biking that you had to do?
Yeah, I would say in Namibia, going into Windhoek, um, it was just a really hard day. So for one, in Namibia, there's no shoulder on the road. So there's 2 lanes, lots of semi trucks, and I'm riding on the road with the semi trucks. I don't have the luxury of a shoulder. Uh, and Windhoek, to get there, I'm going uphill the whole time. And then I have this very strong headwind. And if you've ever ridden a bicycle with a headwind, you know how debilitating it is. It just stops you in your tracks. So I'm there with the semi trucks, with the headwind going uphill, and then there are thorns all along the road, and I keep getting flats. I get flat after flat after flat, and I stop and change the tube, and then the new tube will get a flat, and then I stop and try to fix the puncture, and that was just a really, really hard day. It was
Sounds
just
like
one
it
thing
would
after
be,
the
yeah.
next.
Yeah. But I'm sure on your way you got to see some of the great wonders of the world. Did you encounter any wildlife? Something, something's near a jungle or in the middle of the road? Anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, there were a couple times where I took some time to do little safaris, not with my bike. I actually tried. I called the national parks and asked if I could ride my bike through the park, and they they laughed at me because that would have been a silly thing to do with the lions and the elephants
Yeah.
around. But I did take some time to do a trek in Burundi impenetrable forest to go see the mountain gorillas. And so the special thing about this is that the mountain gorillas only live in their natural habitat in a few countries in Africa, like Rwanda, Uganda, and Democratic Republic of Congo. You don't see them; they can't survive in zoos. So the zoo gorillas are lowland gorillas. So if you want to see these mountain gorillas, you need to trek into the forest to see them. And so I did that, and you find where the gorillas are, and they're walking through the forest, and they eventually they stop to eat, and you can approach them. And I got just within 2 meters of this silverback gorilla while he's sitting there and eating. And it's just such an amazing and special experience. I also was riding through Botswana, and in Botswana, it's like an elephant sanctuary in the whole country. And so the elephants are everywhere, on the road, beside the road.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I'm riding in Botswana, you see these elephants that are just right next to the road, and you don't know what to do because the male elephants will kind of puff themselves up and put their ears out like a warning. And I don't want them to charge at me. And so there's no fence. This isn't a zoo. This is an elephant, big pack of elephants, and the male elephant is trying to protect his family on the side of the road. And so what I had to do was wait for cars or trucks to come along, and then I could ride next to the car or truck to be kind of a buffer from the elephant. So if they were to charge, at least they would charge the car and not me on a bicycle.
Do you feel that there's a connection between what you do as a storyteller for the Red Cross, the American Red Cross, and whatever it is that makes you want to take this kind of bicycle journeys?
Oh, for sure. I mean, so in both instances, you have opportunities to meet people and to go to places that you would never go to otherwise. So working with the American Red Cross, I have access to, for example, the shelter where people take refuge after a storm, after a hurricane or a wildfire. And this is a privilege that I would only get by working through the American Red Cross. And so you get to meet people in these different places and see things that you just wouldn't get to otherwise. And so it's really just a privilege to either travel by bicycle or to do my job with the Red Cross where I can have these experiences.
And what's the difference to you in traveling, between traveling as a cyclist on your own versus going on a humanitarian mission for the American Red Cross?
There's a lot of differences, and partially it's of course like your goal on each day. So when I'm on my bicycle, I don't know where I'm sleeping that night. I need to figure out where I can sleep, where I can eat. And so there's all these logistical concerns that I need to figure out. And so I'm interacting with people, just trying to say, hey, where's a restaurant where I can get some food, or where can I set up my tent or get a room to stay in? Traveling for work with the American Red Cross, I'm there as a video producer. And so I'm going into these situations and talking to people about their stories. And I have a job to do. I need to produce videos for the Red Cross. And so you're going in and you can talk to people, and you can sort of, it's similar in that in both instances, you're trying to find out information, whether it's like logistical information or just finding out what they experienced in the course of a natural disaster, for example.
Can you talk to us about some of the assignments you've had in the last few years that brought you to other parts of the world?
Yeah, so I work with every different line of service in the American Red Cross, whether it's disaster, blood donation, or international services. And so when there's a big hurricane or a wildfire or tornado, I'll often deploy to those places through my work with the Red Cross. And with international services, I've gotten to do some really amazing missions. So the last one I did was in Zambia, and this was a country along my route on my bicycle trip as well. There was a measles vaccination campaign in Zambia. And so I got to go and see the work of the local Zambian Red Cross. And we worked in the communities, and it was really about finding the pockets of unvaccinated children and then making sure that those vaccines get to those places.
You've, of course, done many stories about crisis in your own country, the United States. What are you covering right now? And can you talk to us about the recent hurricanes?
Yeah, so right now we've had a few big disasters in the United States recently, most notably Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Milton. These were both storms that made landfall in Florida, and then Hurricane Helene unfortunately also went all the way up the coast and caused major flooding throughout that whole route, including in North Carolina, which is a place that got hit very badly by the floodwaters. And so we have been working in all of these communities and just trying to provide relief for the people who have been impacted by these storms.
More in general, as a storyteller, what would you say were some of the most memorable stories or situation you reported on in the United States?
Yeah, I would say the Paradise Fire in California was a very memorable one. That was a fire that destroyed the entire community of Paradise, California. Um, and the fire came in very quickly, very unexpected. Um, and people had to evacuate the town in a very dramatic way. And then when they came back, there was nothing left. And so when I visited, it was a little bit after the fire, and the people were surveying just the remains of where their homes used to be and trying to decide if they wanted to even rebuild or if they were going to come back. And so we talked to people who were in the process of rebuilding already, and they said, Paradise is my home and this is where I'm staying. And we talked to other people who just said, we can't do it. We're not going to come back to Paradise. As much as we love this place, we can't return to it. And so that was a very memorable experience. And I think another one was Hurricane Harvey in Texas. This was probably the first very large hurricane that I covered after joining the American Red Cross. And just seeing the huge range of just the widespread flooding that people experienced and the power outages. There were so many people who their homes were destroyed. And the Red Cross, thankfully, was there to provide shelter and to provide food and relief to all these people throughout the Houston area, which is where I was working from.
What would you say are the keys, the secrets maybe, of good visual storytelling?
Yeah, I would say that for one, it always starts with the connection to your subject. I don't approach somebody with the camera in front of my face. I approach them as a Red Crosser and as a person. And you go and you talk to people and you listen to their story and you connect with them and you learn about them and you listen to them. And throughout that process, then people can get comfortable with you. And then after you've gotten to know them a little bit, then you can explain, well, I'm here as a video producer and I would love to capture your story. Then people are comfortable and they're okay. And if you approach people in a way that you're a person and you're a Red Crosser first, you can make these connections and you can get stories that you just wouldn't get if you didn't have that rapport.
So I think you've already touched upon this a little bit, but in your view, how do you navigate the line, sometimes very thin line, between what can be powerful human interest storytelling and something that could be potentially exploitative of someone's suffering?
Mm-hmm. Well, our stories are always hopeful. We're telling stories that are very emotional and people went through really difficult experiences. But at the end of the day, we're trying to bring hope. And the Red Cross, that's our mission. We help people. We bring hope on people's darkest days. And so through the storytelling, we're doing the same. We'll talk about the difficult experiences that people went through, but we'll also talk about the ways that they're feeling hopeful for the future and they're
And the
building
ways they're
towards
being
their.
helped, right?
Of course, and building towards their recovery
Yeah,
with the help of the Red Cross.
yeah. How would you say, as a professional visual storyteller, how is visual storytelling changing, especially with technology that's constantly evolving?
Yeah, it's been a really interesting time. I think throughout my career, especially with the growth of the internet and all these social platforms, the mediums are always changing, and you have to shoot and you have to tell your stories for your medium. You know, a story that's going on TV is going to be different from a story that's going online. Um, the way that you tell the story is different. The style is different. Sometimes the format is different. You're shooting vertical versus horizontal. And so I think that when I start a project, I'm always thinking about the end. You know, I'm thinking about how is it going to be distributed? Where is it going to be shown? And that informs the way that you produce the story. And so, you know, if the story is going on to social media in a YouTube short, for example, you got to shoot it in a certain way. It's got to be vertical. It's got to be less than a minute. But if it's going onto redcross.org, onto the American Red Cross website, that's a different style. It's a different format and a different audience, really. So I'm always thinking about the ways in which we can package the story for the audience and meeting the audience where they are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really important point, meeting them where they are, right? What are the most interesting and exciting trends, would you say, in this changing visual storytelling, and how can we use them in the most positive way possible?
Yeah, so one of the things that we just finished here at the American Red Cross is a pilot of YouTube Shorts. And so YouTube Shorts is YouTube's way of competing with things like TikTok and Instagram Reels. And so they're 1 minute vertical videos. And so I worked with our social team, with Jess Buckholtz, to pilot this project of YouTube Shorts. And so we looked at the most engaging content from our channel and from the other social channels. And for us, that's training services content. This is the first aid and CPR training content. And so we took videos that we had done for other platforms, like for TikTok or for Instagram, and we re-edited them and posted them on YouTube Shorts. And it actually turned out really well. The YouTube Shorts performed better than our average videos on our American Red Cross
Mm-hmm.
YouTube channel. And so that's just something that we're going to continue and that we're testing, and just you have to learn about all these different platforms and learn where the audience is. And if the audience likes a certain type of content, like first aid CPR training, and they like it delivered via something like a YouTube short, then that's what we're going to try to do.
So we always ask our guests to bring an object that has some personal meaning to them. Can you tell us what you brought and why it has a special meaning for you, and show it to the camera for our visual viewers?
Sure. So I have this special Red Cross vest. This is not the normal kind of vest that disaster responders get. This is a special vest, and it's great for people like me who are photographers and videographers because it has all of these extra pockets. So I use this vest when I'm working, and it has places where I can put camera batteries and media cards. It's like the combination of a photography vest and a Red Cross vest. So of course it's emblemized with the Red Cross
Mm-hmm.
logo, but it works for me as a photographer because I can have all of my tools with me.
So as you know, since you mentioned you brought the vest, as you know, the name of this podcast is People in the Red Vest. It's
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily red, right? But
Right.
it's symbolic. It's some kind of vest uniform that people in the Red Cross, Red Crescent movement wear. What does the red vest mean to you?
So the Red Cross is such a powerful symbol. Anywhere you go in the world, people recognize it. I remember being in Kenya years ago with a different measles vaccination campaign, and we were driving through an area that could be considered a little bit dangerous. But the people we were with, the Kenyan Red Cross people, they said, everybody put on your vests. And when you do that, you're protected because people know the Red Cross logo. They know that the logo means humanitarian, it means protection, it means hope, it means all of these things. But the symbol is so powerful that just putting on the vest gives you protection in a dangerous area. It's such an amazing thing.
At the end of the day, with all that's going on in the world, what gives you hope or brings you comfort? What inspires you, keeps you going?
Yeah, I think what inspires me is the fact that anywhere you go in the world, you will find people who are trying to help. I went into Red Cross offices on my bike trip. I went and stopped in a Red Cross office in Malawi, for example. I saw them all along the route, but this office in Malawi was right next to the road. And so I stopped in and said hi, and I said, hey, I'm with the American Red Cross. I'm passing through. And you see these people who are working in this very remote place in Malawi, and they're working to help people. And you find this everywhere in the world. And it's just amazing that despite all of the issues and the problems that people face, there are enough people who are out there trying to help and trying to make the world a better place.
Thank you, Brad, for sharing your experiences and insights with our audience and allowing us to get to know you a little bit.
Thank you so much for having me.